Hey guys, this is Ginger Schell from GT Bootcamp. Today I decided not to do my recording live because what I'm about to share with you is so personal that, to be honest with you, I was afraid I might cry and I didn't want to be distracted by all the little icons popping up when people started watching. So I'm recording this ahead of time and then uploading it to Facebook, so that when you see this, it's already done. If it looks like I'm reading, it's because I have a lot of notes in front of me. I'm really nervous about sharing this, and I didn't want to ramble on or get distracted. I want to stay focused, so that's why I have notes in front of me. Day before yesterday, I shared with you all about how I got my first client when I started my business. Today, I want to tell you what led me to needing to start my own business in the first place. Some of you already know parts of my story and how ugly it is. Others of you have never heard it, so I'm just going to share a little bit and we'll see how it goes. When I've shared my story in the past, I've just hit the highlights. Today, I'm going to share more than I have ever shared publicly before. All right. In 1992, I was a 21-year-old girl attending a local 2-year college to become a physical therapist assistant. I lived alone in a little studio apartment. During the day, I'd go to classes, and in the evenings, I waited on tables at a local restaurant to pay my bills. I hated college. I had always hated school. From the time I was a little girl, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a wife and a mom. And whenever someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I always say, I want to be a mom. So I was in school out of necessity, but my heart wasn't in it at all. During this time, I met my husband. He was charismatic, handsome, super smart. He was a Christian. He seemed motivated to succeed from a financial perspective. On the surface, he seemed like exactly what I was looking for. Long story short, I quit school and we got married. We met in February, got engaged in August, got married in September. So from the time I met him to the time we got married was only about 8 months. I was very excited about getting married and starting a family. Like I said, from the time I was a little girl, all I ever wanted to do was to be a wife and a mom. I wanted that more than I wanted anything. So I was very excited about that. Unfortunately, what started out as excitement became a nightmare very, very quickly. Within the first month of being married, he started hitting me. For about the first year, he did that on a regular basis. The purpose was to bend my will. No, it was to break my will and to teach me to submit to his will. And it took about a year to do that. I fought back a little bit that first year, but not much. I think I was too shocked and I was young and I don't know. At some point, I just accepted that this was my life now, and I adjusted. Then in 1993, I got pregnant with my oldest child, Annie. That was when my husband quit hitting me. He didn't hurt me again physically for a long time. Part of that is because I had learned my place, and the other part was because he had a new weapon to use against me. He had my child. He would regularly say to me, do what I say, or I'll take her and you'll never see her again. He did that over and over throughout the 14 years we were together. We had 4 children, and anytime he thought I was getting out of line, he would always say, do what I say, or I'll take the children and you'll never see them again. Anyway, this went on for 14 years until it reached a crisis point. I'm not going to go into all that. And my children and I had to go into hiding. That was July of 2006. At that point, my girls were ages 12, almost 11, and 7, and my baby boy was 6 months old. My in-laws came and got us out of the house while my husband was at work, and they drove us halfway to Illinois, where my brother picked us up and took us to his home in Illinois. I had never been to Illinois before. I wasn't close to my brother at that time, so I knew my husband wouldn't think to look for us that far away from South Carolina. We got to Illinois, and for the next year, my children and I lived in my brother and sister-in-law's basement. I tried to carry my weight in the house the best I could. I cleaned and cooked and did my best to be helpful, but I was completely reliant on them to meet not just my needs, but the needs of my 4 children as well. It was humbling and humiliating, but at the same time, to be out from under the thumb of my husband, it was liberating. But along with that freedom, there was guilt, because I was no longer submitting to my husband, and the importance of doing that had been pounded into my head for years and years by my husband. So I continually struggled with whether or not I had done the right thing by packing up my children and leaving. It was ugly and it was messy, but at the same time, it was beautiful. I can remember one of the first nights after we got to my brother's home, one of my daughters said, "Mommy, I'm glad I don't have to be afraid anymore." So when we got to my brother's house, and it was clear we were not going to be going back to South Carolina, I knew we couldn't live in my brother's basement forever. I was going to have to pick myself up and do something to reach the place that I could take care of my children on my own. And like I said, I quit college in 1992. When we went into hiding, I had no driver's license, no skills, no money, no car. I had nothing except an absolute determination to somehow, some way, remain a stay-home mom. My kids were used to being home with me, and the thought of dumping them in a strange school and putting my baby in daycare I was determined to avoid that choice as long as possible. My brother had a computer and the internet, so I started looking for work from home jobs, and that's when I discovered medical transcription. I didn't like to type. I was a slow typist, and I hated and still hate medical stuff. But hey, this is perfect for me. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I decided it was a good choice for me. I talked to my parents about it, and they gave me $3,800 to take a distance learning course. And it was supposed to take a year to complete it. I was eager to get it completed as quickly as possible, so I worked hard through the course and completed it in 11 months. I got a job within a couple of weeks of completing the course, and right around this time, we were able to move out of my brother's basement into our own place. It was tiny, it was cheap, but we didn't care. It felt like this was a turning point for us. I was rubbing my hands together thinking, okay, let's do this. This is when everything is going to change and get better. I was wrong. I was fired from my first job within a week or so. I was told it was because they had lost an account, but I always believed it was because I wasn't good at my job. I got my second job almost as quickly. This job was for a company that transcribed for large hospitals. It was a coveted job among the students who had taken the same course I had taken. So again, I was very excited. But again, my excitement was short-lived. The work was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And it was so much harder than the work I had done in the course. I couldn't type fast enough. I didn't understand all the medical specialties. And most of the doctors either spoke with a heavy foreign accent or they were speed talkers who didn't care a bit whether the person listening on the other side of them could understand what they were saying at all. For 7 months, I struggled to improve and learn and make a decent wage, but I was only averaging around $4 an hour. I could have made more money flipping hamburgers at McDonald's, and I could have done it with a whole lot less stress. It was embarrassing. It was demoralizing. And I was turning into a grouchy human being. It was a rough year for my children because I was not any fun to be around. Sometimes I would just sit at my computer and cry. And my daughter, Katie, who was around 8 at that time, would come up behind me and put her little head on my back to try to comfort me. It was awful. My parents had spent all this money for me to take this course. My brother and sister-in-law had let us live in their basement so I could learn this skill and get on my own 2 feet. And they had bought me a laptop so I could do my work. And now, on top of that, we have our own home. What in the world was I going to do? But I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. It wasn't paying off. I wasn't making enough money. I was miserable, and I was making my children miserable too. So, even though it made me feel like a colossal failure, I quit. I quit, and I began babysitting to pay our bills while I figured out what to do next. A lot of you know what happened next, but I'm going to share it again for people who don't. I was sitting in church one Sunday, and out of the blue, a question hit me out of nowhere. Do pastors have their sermons transcribed? It got me thinking. If they do, this would be the perfect job for me. I've been going to church all my life, so I understand the subject very well. Most pastors care if the people listening understand what they're saying, so I wouldn't have to deal with mush-mouth speed talkers anymore. If I transcribed for mostly American pastors, then I wouldn't have to deal with heavy foreign accents. And most churches record their sermons with high quality equipment, so I wouldn't have to deal with poor quality audio files either. So I went home, found churches that love having their sermons transcribed, and the rest is history. Most people want to know if I made much money starting out, so I'm about to be very transparent with you and share some of my numbers from the first few years. Keep in mind, I was still babysitting in my home when I started out, so I didn't rely on my transcription income completely. I had the babysitting money to help pay the bills as well. So also, after the first year or so, I began to hire transcriptionists because, quite frankly, I enjoy proofreading more than I enjoy transcribing, and I enjoy the business side of running a transcription business. So I hired transcriptionists. Eventually, I hired a full-time proofreader. So the numbers I'm about to share with you include the money I paid my entire team. I'm not going to break those numbers down for you, but this will give you a feel for the trend for the entire team, not just my personal income. Okay, here we go. For the first 6 months, I worked for 7 churches, and I made about $2,400. Not very good. In hindsight, my prices were way too low, and that's another recording for another day, another lesson for another day, but that was a huge mistake. I could have doubled that if I had been smart about pricing from the beginning, but I wasn't. Okay, in 2009, I worked for 44 churches and made over $23,000. And this is around the time I started hiring transcriptionists to help me because there's no way I could work for 44 churches by myself. Some of that income, keep in mind, was not I didn't just get clients and keep them all year long. Some of them would use me one time. They would send me one file, have me transcribe it, and then I never heard from them again. Some of them signed up for weekly service, and they're still my clients today. So that 44 churches includes a lot of one-time jobs and continuous jobs. Okay, in 2010, we had over 54 clients and made over $60,000. In 2011, over $82,000. And in 2012, that's when we hit the jackpot and got a project transcribing 22 years worth of sermons for one pastor. And that year we made close to $200,000. Again, at that point, I had around 10 transcriptionists and a full-time proofreader working for me, so that money was spread out amongst all of us over a long period of time. But still, that was a good year. I'm not going to tell you my income beyond that, but I'll simply say that some years are better than others, but I have earned a full-time income from my transcription business since around 2010. So that was within 2 to 3 years of starting my business. And that's when I quit babysitting and relied completely on my transcription income. Okay, I shared this story with you all for one reason. I know there are people listening right now who believe they can't start their own business or work from home. But if I can do it, you can do it too. Is it hard? Yeah, it's very hard. Is it worth it? 10,000%. I would not trade the years that I was able to be home with my children for anything in the world. Nothing. So I don't have any questions for today. I just wanted to give those of you who are on the fence about making some choices that were similar to mine all those years ago, a little bit of inspiration and hope that you can succeed too. So that's it. Thanks, guys.